Man, that was a heck of a demo.
Yeah, Travis has a lot of energy. His passion, his technical expertise, I think, really come through. And I think I'm so excited that we're able to ship this new version of Sonar with so much data and so much insight.
Yeah, supply chain intelligence is really bringing in a lot of decision elements of what goes into how a supply chain manager, supply chain executive thinks about their freight network and all of the decisions that they have to make. And I really think that roadmap for Sonar SCI is going to be so expansive. As you mentioned, Travis is not only high energy, he's very passionate, but he's also exceptionally chill too. So he's got the weird combination, not weird, but unique combination of being passionate, but also super laid back, which makes him a very effective product leader.
And what I love about him too is that where a lot of the core of our company started off, on the transportation side, he's really seen those deep freight networks from the inside out in previous lives.
And the supply chain element is really
Yeah.
important. As we think about where this is all ending up, as we think about where not only Sonar, but the FreightWaves editorial product has really evolved to, you've been a part of that ride for 3 years. You started out doing, being a journalist and writing stories. You've written stories on all parts of the FreightWaves network. Then you took over Passport, which is a research product which provides editorial analysis and data specific for executives, basically an executive level summary of what's happened in market. And now you have something called Communities, which is taking supply chain stories, but really from the perspective of someone in supply chain. And you're taking really the role, initially at least, to focus on 3 industries. What are those industries? Tell me a little bit more about Communities.
Yeah, so Communities is just a way for us to meet people on their own terms, engage with our audience in a little bit more targeted and intimate way than we have before. We're starting off with a focus on retail, CPG, and automotive, recognizing that each of those verticals has all of these different stories. These industries are undergoing transformations right now. And what's crazy is that the people doing that in the industry already read FreightWaves, right? They're already customers of Sonar, but we haven't really engaged them with an immersive editorial product just for them. And so that's what Communities is really about.
So Communities is example of like auto is rather than talking about supply chain broadly, with Communities, when you start talking about the auto supply chain and the issues at Ford and General Motors and Tesla are very different than the issues that someone that runs supply chain at Walmart or Home Depot face.
That's right.
These are very different sort of supply chain elements. And with Communities, you're actually breaking up the content and developing supply chain stories for each of those audiences.
Yeah, we are. And so, as an example, one of the big themes in automotive that's particular to automotive is how the rise of electric vehicles implies a whole different network of suppliers for OEMs. It's also, in some cases, a much simpler network. And so how the OEMs can operate can change in substantial ways. And so, that story is for a very specific audience. It's going to be a theme that plays out for a number of years. And we want to have sort of team leads to focus on these industries, really speak to the people leading these transformations and also learn from them and kind of establish that feedback loop that's highly engaged and really responsive.
To have analysts that are studying the supply chain issues that each of those sectors face. So retail, obviously the intersection of e-commerce, last mile, I wouldn't call it the death, but the declining of brick and mortar and the pressures that are on that. But they're looking at it from a holistic element of logistics and supply chain and really taking a deep dive into that. You have auto, which you mentioned is about the intersection of EV and the conversions away from the internal combustion engine, what that means for the supply chain. And then in CPG,
there's a great story about going direct to consumer, right? And either partnering with retailers on omni-channel strategies or skipping over them directly, right? So you see someone like Nestle, that's a big food and beverage company, buying a meal delivery company, right?
Yeah, I saw that.
And so like that's the kind of thing, and those are just sort of blips on a longer story, but that's what we're here to really dive into and master and talk about in a kind of a fresh and intelligent way.
So let's talk about what the product Communities really is. It's a newsletter, it's a podcast and a video cast, but it's for that audience. So someone that's really interested in the auto supply chain would tune into that, and someone that's perhaps someone that isn't at a supplier or an auto manufacturer or happens to be a transportation provider in the auto sector would subscribe. There's no cost for that. It's free.
Exactly. And so, I mean, we have a great newsletter at FreightWaves already. It goes out to, I want to call it 150,000 people. The problem with that is, how do we make decisions about where to target it, right? It's almost like so many people get it. We need to build these new audiences from the ground up, really listen to them, talk to them, and learn sort of about the content that they're interested in, right?
It's a much more intimate conversation between the editor who's writing the newsletter and the audience, which is in that business.
That's right. I mean, there are all these new media brands that are thinking about newsletters and editorial content in a fresh, like personality, voice-driven way, right? And by and large, they're covering like brands, maybe retail brands, but no one's really doing that for the supply chain side of these industries. And so that's really where we think that we can bring in some new talent, let them be digital content creators, and also bring our expertise of doing interviews with practitioners, our own data, and things like that, and making a really unique offering.
You can sign up directly on the website for Communities. It's completely free. So if you're interested in auto, consumer packaged goods, CPG, or retail, if you're interested in those topics, there'll be a daily newsletter, a podcast and video cast that's weekly. And really, it's just a breakdown of the news, but from a supply chain perspective on what's happening. As you mentioned, the Nestle transaction of buying a meal kit delivery service, that is a perfect example of what this particular topic or this particular newsletter that's focused on CPG would dive into.
Right. So it's going to be a blend of newsletters, video, podcasts, maybe even live events down the road, right? And it's all about, again, building up these audiences from the ground up, being highly engaged with them, and really just having our team leaders be the voice of these, help be the voice of these industries.
Got it. Well, JP, I'm excited of what is going to happen with Communities, certainly the direction of these industries, and having deep analytics informed by data and commentary from a supply chain point of view specific to these audiences. I think it's going to be a great initiative. And congratulations on what you guys are working on. If you're interested in signing up for the newsletters, be sure to go on to FreightWaves.com. There is a link at the top of our FreightWaves website where you can sign up for the Communities newsletter. And again, if you're interested in auto, CPG, or retail, those are the communities that you want to be a part of. There's no cost. So if you're interested in how supply chain is impacting those industries, or those industries are impacting their supply chain, sign up today. The very top banner of FreightWaves.com can get you connected to those newsletters. Be sure to sign up. It's free. If you're in those industries, you want to be a part of the conversation.